Joe, what is the latest that we know on Greece's travails?
Well, there's a website called Vima, which is a Greek newspaper, and they have published a letter that they claim is from the Troika, that is the European Union, the IMF and the European Central Bank. There's the people who lend the money, the emergency money, to Greece. This letter from the Troika, addressed to the Greek government, suggests some pretty onerous and draconian changes that need to be implemented starting tomorrow. And that means that roughly 100,000 state employees in Greece face immediate redundancy starting tomorrow. And all of them have to have lost their jobs over the next 3 years. There's also pension cuts. There's also increased taxes, privatisations, sell-offs. A list of 15 points from the Troika to the Greek government, things that are being digested in the cabinet meeting that you're making reference to, and one suspects that that cabinet meeting will be pretty fraught because any minister that signs up for this is potentially writing his own political death warrant.
It's this balancing act, isn't it? The world wants to see great austerity, but the Greek government must look at this and think, if we sack all these people, the chances of us growing the economy are zip.
The economists are having a field day at this because when you sack people and when you reduce investment, etc., it's called a deflationary measure. You're taking money out of the economy. The less money that's swashing around in the economy, it means it can't be invested and you cannot grow, which means you exacerbate the debt problem. You can't get the debt mountain down if there's no companies there to grow the problem away. That is the traditional thinking. But the Troika, back to the European Union, the ECB and the IMF, they say the debt mountain is the priority. You've got to cut the debts in order to make Greece a more viable country. The debt mountain is simply too big. So that's their thinking. There was a meeting of finance ministers over the last 2 days in Poland, and they said, no, Greece is not going to get the next instalment of their bailout. That's €8 billion, until such time as they're happy that these cuts and these draconian measures have at least started their implementation. But of course that could lead to massive riots and political instability in Greece. And then the European Union may not get its money back at all.
We keep talking about orderly default, disorderly default. Does this give Greece any hope of avoiding some kind of default?
Well, as part of the second bailout for Greece, which is about €109 billion, which is being discussed at the moment, there is talk about a partial default or kind of a write-down. So the banks that are owed money in Greece would get a proportion of their money back, or they'd do what's called a rollover. They would get their money back and then instantly reinvest in Greece. That's part of the second bailout. But we're not anywhere near the second bailout yet because we're still dealing with the crisis from the first bailout. And it appears as if now Greece is even closer to default because if they don't get this $8 billion, they can't repay the debts. You can see the vicious circle I've started here. If they don't get the $8 billion, they can't repay the debts, and ergo they immediately default, and the whole of the Eurozone and the European Union, including Britain, is plunged into a serious crisis.
Damned if they do, and perhaps damned if they don't. Joe Lynham, thank you very much indeed.